Hello, I'm Jeffrey K. Mondello, editor of the Boston Catholic Journal, and I have a question for you. Where do we go from here when Pope Francis eradicates the Latin Mass? In his rage against anyone and anything that stands in the way of his ecumenical vision of a church bleached of its Catholicism, it is widely reported that Francis soon plans to crush, once and for all time, what he sees as the principal obstacle to this agenda, the Latin Mass. It is, as he sees it, the last vestige, not simply for the Catholic Church to become sufficiently decatholicized, much in the way that the Novus Ordo Mass of Pope Paul VI has been, but totally expunged. The Latin Mass alone cannot easily be aligned with, nor embraced by other, what is the ecumenical term? Ecclesial communities that long ago, during the Protestant revolt, left the Church, finding her teachings and worship abhorrent and hateful. Francis then has decided to stamp it out. Every extant remnant that could in some way, however remote, recall the life of the Church as it existed before Vatican II is to be remorselessly expurgated from living memory. I had written about this some time ago in an article outlining the ecumenical need for the extinction of any memory of the Catholic Church prior to Vatican II, much in the way that North Korea implemented what it called the three-generation solution to eradicate any memory of what life was like in North Korea prior to the communist Kim dynasty, extending from Kim Il-sung in 1948 to the present-day Kim Jong-un. By programmatically throttling the transmission of culture from one generation to the next, the Kim dynasty succeeded within 3 generations in isolating the last generation from any memory of the first. Only the state remained. In a similar manner, Pope Francis is equally determined that only Vatican II will remain and nothing before it. And this most especially pertains to the Novus Ordo Mass of Paul VI. For this to happen, the Latin Mass must go. It is the most monumental, emblematic, and visible institution that is the sine qua non of anything identifiable as uniquely Catholic. And for this reason, it is seen by Francis as the most dangerous. After 2,000 years, it just will not go away by itself. It has survived 200 centuries of persecution, oppression, infiltration, corruption, scandal, intrigue, pagan armies, heretics, apostates, dictators, unworthy pontiffs, depraved cardinals, craven bishops, every imaginable adversary, and never faltered. There is a reason for this, and it lies in the promise of our blessed Lord. The very gates of hell will not prevail against it. And this time will be no different. Even if Francis succeeds in closing all the doors to all the churches that celebrate the Latin Mass, he does not, because he cannot, abolish, let alone stop, the Mass of the Ages celebrated in Latin. It has been celebrated without interruption for nearly 2,000 years. The Apostolic Constitution, Quo Primum, of 1570, binds us forever to the Mass as it was celebrated prior to 1962. As the Church has survived previous disasters, it will survive Francis. This is without question. Let's talk about the Master, the Steward, and the keys. For a time, the Master gave the Steward, that is to say, Francis, keep of the house and even keys to the doors. But what is written on the hearts of men is etched more deeply and universally than the instructions that came with the keys. Instructions that the steward, in the Master's absence, tossed away, seizing the house and imagining it his own. Christ spoke a parable to this effect. I will come to the point. Francis cannot take your being Catholic away from you. He concedes all the properties belonging to the post-Catholic Conciliar Church of Vatican II, the buildings, the chattel, the real estate, the bank accounts, in a word, everything tangible that is the property of the Church. St. Athanasius once wrote about something very similar during what is called the Arian heresy. Your traditional Catholic parish may be taken from you, yes, but your traditional Catholic faith, together with the Latin language through which it has ever been liturgically expressed, and that treasury of countless prayers, devotions, and litanies, the chants and hymns, the magnificent classical requiems, masses, and motets in Latin, these beautiful and sacred gifts from God himself, that he himself has nurtured within you, and which have become part of the fabric of Western culture itself, can never be taken from you by any decree, papal or otherwise. Simply because they may be offensive to other ecclesial communities outside the Catholic Church, communities that have always been deeply antagonistic to the Church and what she authentically teaches. How would this be possible? Can the sacred love in your heart that is inescapably bound up with your being a traditional Catholic be subject to law, abolished as by an ecumenical decree as incorrect, suspended by interdiction? Are you no longer a Catholic in the eyes of the post-Catholic Conciliar Church if the word traditional is prefixed to it or in some way predicated of it? I open this discussion with a question. Where do we go from here? That is to say, when Pope Francis totally prohibits the Latin Mass in every parish throughout the world. This, unquestionably, is the foremost question in the mind of virtually every traditional Catholic throughout the world. Where do I go now? Not must we, but can we really attend without impairment to our faith, our very lifeblood in Christ, that faith, through exposure to the Novus Ordo Mass at our local parish, which appears to be understood as, let me enumerate a few, as entertainment, complete with applause, a social, a musical, so often a comedy, or what is tantamount to a talent show among competing entertainers, an unpredictable liturgical laboratory that is a linguistic exercise in evading masculine nouns and pronouns, especially as they pertain to God. A Mass that appears to be understood as a simple meal, a banquet, much as the Protestants have, devoid of the absolutely essential sacrificial nature of the Mass, and often an opportunity to promote what is, for the moment, a secular agenda that absolutely has no place in divine worship. That impedimenta should be left on the sidewalk outside the church. It is not of God. It is of the world. Does your Novus Ordo parish have a congenial atmosphere? One sterilized of the sacred, but correctly sensitive to the social and political toxins permeating the secular world outside it, where music ministers provide tinkling pianos before Mass, much as we may hear in a nightclub, together with folk music that no one outside the Catholic Church has used since 1970, where the priest routinely leaves the sanctuary to engage his audience by homilizing in the aisle, often in a question and answer format, where there is applause after Mass and even during Mass. If something is particularly cute, where there are more women by far around the altar than men, and you feel privileged if you receive Holy Communion from the consecrated hands of a priest, rather than your neighbor's wife, who is one of the many Eucharistic ministers, and where the lectors are exclusively women, and now even where the acolytes are women. That's Francis's initiative. If you can overcome the sense of the growing feminization of so many roles in and around the altar, in front of it, beside it, behind it, then perhaps your segue into the Novus Ordo Mass of Pope Paul VI will be painless. But I doubt it. On the other hand, if you find yourself confronted with the prospect of damaging, diminishing, or undermining your faith by participating in the Novus Ordo Masses that you find manifestly unworthy of God, corrosive to your faith, and which present a danger to your immortal soul, it would appear wise to worship somewhere that your father's father and his father's father would recognize as the Catholic Mass of his forebears, as it was celebrated in the catacombs during that persecution of Catholics by other tyrants who now descend upon us once again. As you see, I have no answer. You will answer this question. I increasingly find myself moving across a divide that I did not make and do not relish. That responsibility lies with Francis alone. I know my shepherd, and it is not Francis. God keep you.